Rome didn't collapse because of barbarians. It collapsed because it destroyed its own money. This isn't just some dusty old story, it's a warning. It's because the exact same mistake, the very same pattern, is playing out right now in economies all over the world. To understand our future, we have to look at Rome's past. Let's travel back to the height of the Roman Empire. Its lifeblood wasn't just its legions, it was its money. The denarius, a small silver coin that was trusted everywhere. If you held a denarius, you knew you were holding nearly pure silver. It had real, tangible value. It'd buy goods, pay soldiers, and build roads with it. This trust was the foundation of the largest and most prosperous economy the world had ever seen. For centuries, the denarius was the dollar of the ancient world, stable, reliable, and accepted from Britain to Persia. But empires are expensive, really expensive. Rome had a vast territory to defend, endless wars to fight on its borders, and a growing government bureaucracy to pay for. It also had to fund massive public works projects, like aqueducts and amphitheaters, and provide the famous bread and circuses to keep the population in Rome happy. The emperor's ambitions grew, but the state's income from taxes and conquests couldn't keep up. The government was spending far more than it was taking in. They were trapped. They needed more money, but the silver mines weren't producing enough. Raising taxes was deeply unpopular and could lead to revolts. So, they found a different solution. A secret, insidious one. They started to cheat. The government began a process we now call debasement. They would recall the old pure silver denarii coins. Then, at the mint, they would melt them down. But instead of minting new pure silver coins, they'd add a little bit of a cheaper metal, like copper, into the mix. So, from the same amount of silver that once made, say, 100 coins, they could now make 110. Those extra 10 coins were pure profit for the state. They looked almost the same, felt the same, and the government declared they had the same value. At first, nobody really noticed. The government had more coins to pay its soldiers and fund its projects. Problem solved, right? Wrong. This was the beginning of the end. This small cheat became a habit, then a full-blown addiction. Each emperor, facing their own financial crisis, would add a little more copper and take a little more silver out. It was a slow-motion financial disaster. The denarius, which started as nearly 100% silver, gradually saw its silver content drop. By the time of Emperor Nero, it was down to about 90%. A century later, it was around 75%, then 50%. It kept falling. By the middle of the 3rd century, the denarius was barely 5% silver. And by the end, some coins were just bronze or copper with a thin, deceptive silver wash that would rub off after just a few transactions. The government was essentially creating fake money. What was the effect of all this? The market isn't stupid. People eventually figured it out. Merchants, shopkeepers, and everyday citizens started to notice the coins didn't look or feel right. They realized that the new coins weren't as valuable as the old ones. A smart merchant would demand more of the new, debased coins for the same loaf of bread. Why? Because he knew the coins themselves were worth less. This is the very definition of inflation. More and more money was chasing the same amount of goods, and it spiraled out of control. Prices for everyday items skyrocketed. What might have cost 1 or 2 denarii a century before now cost hundreds, then thousands. People's life savings, held in what they thought was valuable silver, became worthless. Imagine saving for your retirement only to find that your nest egg can barely buy you a week's worth of groceries. That was the reality for millions of Romans. The government's solution only made things worse. They just mint even more worthless coins, which caused prices to go up even faster. This is what we call hyperinflation. This inflation didn't just make people poor. It shattered the most important pillar of the economy, trust. No one trusted the money anymore. Soldiers who were now being paid in junk metal often revolted. They would prop up their own generals as emperors, leading to constant civil war, which only drained the treasury further and prompted even more coin debasement. It was a vicious cycle. Farmers started hoarding their grain instead of selling it for worthless currency. Merchants stopped making long-distance trades. Why risk a dangerous journey across the Mediterranean if the payment you receive at the end might be worthless by the time you get home? The intricate web of trade that had made the Roman Empire so wealthy completely fell apart. Without a reliable currency, the economy reverted to a primitive state of barter. People started trading goods directly. A sack of wheat for a pair of shoes, a chicken for some pottery. Large-scale, complex economic activity became impossible. The great Roman economic machine ground to a halt. The cities, which depended on trade for their food and supplies, began to shrink as people fled to the countryside to grow their own food. The collapse of the money led to the collapse of the economy, which in turn weakened the state, making it unable to fund its army and defend its borders from the barbarian invasions that followed. The barbarians didn't destroy Rome, so they just walked in and kicked over a rotten structure. The real destruction had come from within, from the moment the state decided to destroy its own currency. History doesn't repeat, but money mistakes do. Subscribe to The Capital Historian.